It was a feeling I couldn't shake, a quiet, persistent whisper in the back of my mind. On the surface, everything looked fine. I had a decent job, a comfortable routine, and friends I could count on, but deep down, something felt off. It was like wearing a shoe that was just a little too tight. You can walk in it, you can get through your day, but you're always aware of the discomfort. This feeling wasn't loud or demanding. It was a gentle, constant nudge, a sense that there was a different path waiting for me, a version of my life that felt more aligned, more vibrant, and more true to who I was meant to be. This inner voice followed me everywhere. It was there during my morning commute, lost in a sea of nameless faces. It was there in team meetings where I would nod along while my mind drifted to bigger questions. What was my purpose? Was this truly all there was to my story? The desire for change wasn't about escaping my life, it was about stepping more fully into it. I yearned for a sense of meaning that my daily tasks couldn't provide. I wanted my actions to be driven by passion, not just by obligation. The gap between the life I was living and the life I imagined began to feel like a vast, empty canyon I had to cross. It's so easy to ignore these feelings. We distract ourselves with endless scrolling, back-to-back shows, and a calendar so full there's no room left to simply think. I was an expert at this. I filled every quiet moment with noise, afraid of what I might hear if I just stopped. But the whisper grew, not in volume, but in its persistence. It was like a tiny seed planted in my heart, and I realized that if I kept ignoring it, it would wither and die, and with it, a part of me would die too. I knew with a certainty that was both terrifying and exciting that I had to make a change. I had to stop running from the silence. The first step is always the hardest. It's the moment you decide to turn and face the direction you've been avoiding. For me, that meant acknowledging this deep, unshakable wish for something more. It wasn't about wanting a new car or a bigger apartment. It was a soul-level craving for a life that resonated with my core values. I wanted to wake up in the morning feeling energized and purposeful, not just rested enough to do it all over again. The time had come to stop looking outside for answers and to finally bravely look within. I had to give that quiet whisper the space it needed to speak. My plan was simple, almost laughably so. I decided to give myself a gift: 20 minutes of complete, uninterrupted silence every single morning. No phone, no music, no podcasts, no distractions. Just me, a comfortable chair, and the quiet of the early morning. It felt radical. In a world that constantly demands our attention, choosing to do nothing felt like an act of rebellion. My goal wasn't to meditate perfectly or to achieve some state of enlightenment. It was simply to create a space where my inner voice could be heard without having to shout over the noise of everyday life. I needed to become a better listener to myself. Alongside this commitment to silence, I bought a simple, empty notebook and a pen. This wasn't for to-do lists or for scheduling appointments. This journal was for my thoughts, my feelings, and my questions. It was a dedicated space for untangling the messy knot of emotions inside me. After my 20 minutes of quiet, I would spend another 10 minutes just writing whatever came to mind. There were no rules, no prompts, and no judgment. The idea was to let the pen move and see what truths would spill onto the page. It was a way to make the intangible whispers tangible, to give them form and clarity. The first few days were incredibly difficult. My mind was like a shaken snow globe, thoughts swirling chaotically. I fidgeted, I made mental grocery lists, and I thought about all the emails I needed to answer. The silence felt loud, amplifying my anxiety and restlessness. It was tempting to quit, to declare the experiment a failure and go back to the comfort of distraction, but I had made a promise to myself. I reminded myself that this was a practice, not a performance. Consistency was more important than perfection. So each morning I returned to the chair, closed my eyes, and simply began again. Slowly something began to shift. On the fourth or fifth day, the storm in my mind started to calm. The silence no longer felt empty. It felt full of potential. It became less of a chore and more of a sanctuary. I started looking forward to this quiet time, this sacred appointment with myself. It was in this newfound stillness that the whispers became clearer. The journal pages, which were at first filled with anxious ramblings, began to hold seeds of ideas and glimmers of insight. The practice was working. I wasn't just sitting quietly, I was building a relationship with my own inner wisdom. After about a week of this consistent practice, it felt as though a dam had broken. The quiet whispers I had been straining to hear transformed into a clear and steady stream of thoughts. Ideas that had been buried under layers of self-doubt and fear began to surface. I filled my journal with them. I wrote about a business idea I'd dismissed years ago, one that combined my creative skills with my passion for helping others. I wrote about the kind of relationships I wanted to build, based on mutual respect and genuine connection, not just convenience. The fog of confusion that had clouded my life for so long was finally beginning to lift. The clarity was astonishing. It wasn't one single dramatic revelation. It was a series of small, interconnected insights that started painting a picture of a new life. I realized my current job wasn't fulfilling because it didn't align with my core value of making a positive impact. I saw that some of my friendships were draining my energy because they were rooted in old habits, not shared growth. My journal became a blueprint, a map drawn by my own intuition. Every morning, more of the path forward was revealed. I felt a surge of energy and excitement I hadn't felt in years. This newfound direction was empowering. Before, the thought of making big life changes was overwhelming, a mountain too high to climb. Now I had a starting point. The ideas in my journal weren't just dreams, they were actionable steps. I started researching how to launch a small business. I began setting healthier boundaries in my relationships. I even started sketching out what my ideal living space would look like, a place filled with light and nature. The fear was still there, but it was no longer in the driver's seat. It was sitting in the back, while my purpose and passion took the wheel. The most profound realization was that all these answers had been inside me all along. They weren't hiding in a book or waiting in a motivational speech from someone else. They were waiting patiently in the quiet corners of my own mind. By intentionally creating silence, I had given them permission to come forward. The daily practice of sitting and journaling became my anchor. It was my non-negotiable ritual for staying connected to my inner compass. I'd stopped asking the world what I should do and had finally started listening to what my soul was telling me. Fast forward a few months and my life is almost unrecognizable in the best possible way. The business idea that surfaced in my journal is now a thriving reality. I took the leap, resigned from my unfulfilling job and poured my energy into my own venture. It's hard work, but it's joyful work. Every day I get to use my unique talents to serve others, and the sense of purpose is more rewarding than any paycheck I ever received. I am no longer just going through the motions. I am actively creating a career that feels like a true expression of who I am. My relationships have transformed as well. The clarity I gained from my quiet time gave me the courage to have honest conversations. I nurtured the friendships that lifted me up and lovingly let go of the ones that held me back. Then, unexpectedly, I met someone new. Our connection is built on the very principles I had written about in my journal: authenticity, shared values, and deep, genuine support. It's a partnership that adds energy to my life instead of draining it. And that dream home I sketched, I now live there. It's a small apartment, but it's filled with sunlight and plants, a peaceful sanctuary that I'm proud to call my own. Looking back, it's incredible to see how everything connects. None of these amazing changes happened by accident. They were the direct result of that one simple decision to sit in silence and listen. Each positive step I took, launching the business, finding my partner, creating my home, was guided by the insights I uncovered during those quiet mornings. The external world simply rearranged itself to match the new clarity and intention I had cultivated internally. My life didn't magically get better. I intentionally and consistently chose a better path, guided by my inner voice. The journey started with an unsettling feeling, a quiet whisper that I almost ignored. Today, that whisper is my most trusted guide. It taught me that the most important conversations we will ever have are the ones we have with ourselves. By giving yourself the gift of silence, you give your inner wisdom a chance to speak. It will show you the way to a life that is not just successful on the outside, but deeply fulfilling on the inside. My life is proof that when you stop, get quiet, and truly listen, you can rebuild your world into something more beautiful than you ever imagined.